The year is 1940, northern France. A single French artillery battery stands between the German armored columns and the collapse of the entire Allied line. They have 72 hours of ammunition. No reinforcements are coming. No relief is promised. Just one order: hold the line at any cost. This is not a story of victory. This is a story of mathematics, of shells counted, hours measured, and men who understood that their sacrifice would buy time measured in minutes, not months. What happened when the last shell was loaded? What drives men to keep firing when they know the outcome is already written? This is the story of how one French artillery unit became a footnote in history, not because they won, but because they refused to stop. The date is May 16, 1940. The German invasion of France, known as Fall Gelb, is 6 days old. The Wehrmacht has already torn through the Ardennes forest, a move the French High Command had declared impossible for mechanized forces. Panzer divisions under Generals Guderian and Rommel have crossed the Meuse River and are now racing westward toward the English Channel, threatening to cut the Allied armies in two. In the chaos of this catastrophic breakthrough, thousands of French units are retreating in disorder. Roads are clogged with refugees. Communications are severed. Command structure is disintegrating. But along a rural sector near the town of Stonne, in the Ardennes department, one artillery unit receives an order that will define the next 3 days of their lives. The unit is the 6th Battery, 155th Regiment of Artillery. They operate 4 Canon de 155C Modely 1917 Schneider howitzers, heavy guns designed in the previous war, each capable of firing a 43-kilogram high-explosive shell up to 11 kilometers. The battery commander is Capitaine Maurice Lebrun, a 38-year-old career officer who served in the tail end of the Great War as a young lieutenant. His men are a mix of regulars and reservists, farmers and factory workers called up in September 1939. Their position is on a low ridge overlooking the Meuse Valley. They have been assigned to support the 3rd Armored Division and the 3rd Motorized Infantry Division in a counterattack designed to blunt the German spearhead. The mission is clear: provide continuous artillery support for French armor attempting to retake the village of Stonne, a strategic crossroads that has already changed hands twice in 24 hours. Capitaine Lebrun gathers his officers. The ammunition situation is explained with brutal honesty. They have 2,880 shells in total. At maximum sustained fire rate, 1 shell per gun every 2 minutes, they can maintain fire for exactly 72 hours. After that, the guns fall silent. There will be no resupply. The French ammunition depots are either overrun, abandoned, or inaccessible due to German air superiority and the breakdown of logistics. Headquarters makes this clear: you have what you have. Use it to maximum effect. Lebrun divides his battery into 2 firing sections. Guns 1 and 2 will focus on observed fire missions, targeting specific German positions identified by forward observers. Guns 3 and 4 will conduct harassment and interdiction fire, hitting road junctions, suspected assembly areas, and approach routes. The forward observer is Sous-Lieutenant Antoine Marchand, positioned in a church steeple in the northern outskirts of Stonne. He has a direct telephone line to the battery, though it will be cut and repaired multiple times over the coming days. Marchand is equipped with binoculars, a map, and a compass. His job is to watch the battlefield and call in targets. At 0615 hours on May 16, the first shells leave the tubes. The target is a column of German trucks and half-tracks moving toward Stonne along the main road from Sedan. Marchand adjusts fire. The second salvo lands directly on the column. Vehicles explode. Troops scatter. The road is blocked by burning wreckage. This is how it begins. The pattern quickly establishes itself. French armor, mostly Hotchkiss H-39 light tanks and a handful of Char B-1 bis heavy tanks, advance toward Stonne. German forces, primarily elements of the Grossdeutschland Infantry Regiment and supporting panzers, counterattack. The village becomes a killing ground. Buildings collapse. Tanks burn in the streets. Infantry fight room to room. And above it all, the French artillery fires. Continuously. Methodically. Lebrun implements a strict fire discipline. Every shell must serve a purpose. Guns are never fired in unison unless massing fire on a critical target. Harassing fire is timed irregularly to prevent the Germans from predicting safe intervals. Observed targets are engaged immediately, but only with the minimum rounds necessary for effect. The gun crews work in shifts. Loading a 155mm howitzer is brutal physical labor. The shell alone weighs 43 kilograms. The powder charge is loaded separately. Each gun has a crew of 8 men, gun commander, layer, loader, 2 ammunition handlers, and 3 support personnel. They work in a choreographed rhythm born of training and necessity. By the afternoon of May 16, the battery has fired 320 shells. Stonne remains contested. German forces have been forced to commit additional reserves. The French counterattack is stalling, but it is not collapsing. Marchand, in his steeple, watches through binoculars as German artillery begins to return fire. The enemy has located the French battery's approximate position through sound ranging and flash spotting. Shells begin to fall on the ridge. The French guns are not in fortified positions, they occupy hasty emplacements with minimal overhead cover. At 1,540 hours, a German 105mm shell lands 12 meters from gun 3. Shrapnel kills 1 man instantly and wounds 2 others. The gun itself is undamaged. Lebrun orders the position shifted 200 meters to the west. The guns are towed by horses. Motorized transport has long since been lost or reassigned. It takes 45 minutes to displace and re-establish firing capability. Night falls. The battle for Stonne continues under flares and burning buildings. The French artillery does not stop. Lebrun rotates his crews in 4-hour shifts. Sleep is taken in snatches on the ground beside the guns. Hot food comes up from a field kitchen 2 kilometers to the rear, but only once per day. The telephone line to Marchand is cut by German artillery at 2,215 hours. A 2-man team crawls forward in darkness to splice the wire. It takes them 3 hours. During this time, the battery fires blind, targeting pre-planned defensive fire zones based on map coordinates. By midnight on May 16, 520 shells have been expended. 2,360 remain. The second day begins before dawn. At 0445 hours on May 17, Marchand reports a new target, a German infantry company assembling in a tree line 800 meters southeast of Stonne. The battery fires a 6-round concentration. Marchand confirms casualties and dispersion. But the larger picture is deteriorating. The French 3rd Armored Division has lost more than half its tanks. German air attacks are intensifying. Stukas dive-bomb French positions with near impunity. The Luftwaffe owns the sky. At 0820 hours, Lebrun receives a dispatch from Division Artillery, continue fire missions as assigned. No ammunition resupply available. Conserve where possible. Good luck. It is a death sentence phrased as an order. Lebrun does not share the message with his men. He simply adjusts the fire plan. The rate of fire is reduced slightly. Harassment missions are scaled back. Every shell must now count for 2. The village of Stonne changes hands again. German infantry, supported by Panzer IIIs and IVs, retake the southern half. French tanks, low on fuel and ammunition, withdraw to defensive positions on the northern edge. The fighting is apocalyptic in its intensity. Bodies lie in the streets. The church where Marchand is positioned takes a direct hit from a tank shell. The steeple partially collapses. Marchand survives. He relocates to a bombed-out farmhouse 300 meters west, re-establishes the telephone connection, and continues to call fire missions. By midday on May 17, the battery has fired 1,100 shells. Less than half remain. German counter-battery fire intensifies. The enemy has now pinpointed the French battery's location with precision. Shells fall in patterns, walking across the ridge in methodical search. At 1,410 hours, a direct hit destroys gun 4. 3 men die. The gun itself is a twisted wreck, barrel bent, breech shattered. Lebrun orders the surviving crew to cannibalize ammunition from the destroyed position and redistribute it to the remaining 3 guns. The mathematics are now brutally clear. 3 guns. 1,780 shells. If they maintain current fire rates, they will run dry in approximately 40 hours. But the German advance has slowed. The counterattack, though failing tactically, has achieved something. It has forced the Wehrmacht to commit reserves, to slow its breakneck pace, to fight for every kilometer. Time is being bought, measured in shells and lives. As the sun sets on May 17, Lebrun stands beside Gun 1 and watches the crew load another round. The men are filthy, exhausted, and moving with the mechanical efficiency of automatons. They do not speak. They simply load, fire, reload. In the distance, Stonne burns. The night of May 17 offers no respite. The German artillery continues its methodical harassment of the ridge, firing sporadic salvos every 20 to 30 minutes. Sleep becomes impossible. The gun crews huddle in shallow scrapes dug beside their positions, flinching at each incoming whistle. At 0230 hours, Lebrun receives new coordinates from division artillery. A German mechanized column has been spotted moving north along a secondary road, attempting to bypass Stonne entirely and exploit the gap in French lines. The battery is ordered to interdict. Lebrun calculates the range, 9,200 meters. Near maximum effective distance for the Canon to 155. He assigns the mission to guns 1 and 2, the most experienced crews. They fire 6-round concentrations at 5-minute intervals, targeting the road and the fields on either side. Marchand, from his new observation post, cannot see the impact zone. It is beyond his line of sight in the darkness. There is no way to confirm hits. The battery fires blind, trusting mathematics and map coordinates. By dawn on May 18, they have expended 84 additional shells on this single interdiction mission. Whether it succeeded is unknown. The column does not appear in the battery sector. It may have been stopped. It may have found another route. In war, outcomes are often invisible to those who create them. The ammunition count now stands at 1,696 shells. Lebrun does the calculation again. At current expenditure rates, they have perhaps 36 hours of fire remaining. The morning brings fog, thick and clinging, settling in the valley like a gray blanket. It grounds the Luftwaffe, a small mercy, but it also blinds Marchand. For 3 hours, the battery holds fire, waiting for visibility to improve. At 0945 hours, the fog begins to lift. What Marchand sees makes his blood freeze. German forces have used the fog as cover to mass for a major assault. Directly below his position, less than 600 meters away, he can see infantry companies forming up, supported by at least a dozen panzers and assault guns. They are preparing to attack the final French positions in Stonne and push northward. Marchand's hands shake as he cranks the field telephone. Fire mission. Infantry and armor in the open. Grid reference 547293. Concentration. Urgent. Fire for effect. Lebrun does not hesitate. All 3 remaining guns are brought to bear. The target is close, the threat immediate, the need absolute. The guns fire in rapid sequence. Boom. 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 The shells arc through the clearing air and fall among the massing Germans. Explosions ripple through the formations. Men and machines scatter. A Panzer III takes a direct hit, its turret blown sideways off the hull. Infantry dive for cover in ditches and shell craters. Marchand adjusts fire, walking the barrage across the assembly area. The battery fires continuously for 12 minutes, expending 72 shells. It is the most intense fire mission they have conducted since the operation began. When the smoke clears, the German attack has been disrupted. Bodies and wreckage litter the field. The surviving forces have withdrawn into the tree line, their assault delayed, perhaps broken. But the cost is severe. The battery has just burned through ammunition at a rate that cannot be sustained. Lebrun calculates, 1,624 shells remain. At this rate of expenditure, they will be dry within 30 hours. He makes a decision. From this point forward, fire missions will be limited to observe targets of immediate tactical significance. Harassment fire is suspended. Interdiction missions must be approved by him personally. Every shell must justify its use. The gun crews sense the shift. They understand what it means. They are running out of time. At 1,130 hours, a motorcycle courier arrives from Division Artillery. He carries a dispatch case and a haggard expression. The message inside is brief, effective immediately. All units prepare for withdrawal to secondary defensive positions. Timeline to be confirmed. Continue fire support until ordered to displace. Destroy all equipment that cannot be evacuated. Lebrun reads it twice. The meaning is clear: the French army is abandoning the Stonne sector. The counterattack has failed. Withdrawal is being planned. But until that order comes, the battery will continue to fire. He burns the message in the open air, grinding the ashes into the soil with his boot. The men watch in silence. No explanation is given. None is needed. The afternoon brings a new challenge. German forces, frustrated by their inability to advance through Stonne, begin to probe the flanks. Small infantry units, supported by mortars and machine guns, attempt to infiltrate the ridge from the east. At 1,445 hours, French infantry, a platoon of colonial troops from the 4th Regiment of Tirailleurs, engage German scouts less than 400 meters from Gun 2's position. Small arms fire crackles across the ridge. Grenades explode in the tree line. Lebrun orders the gun crews to prepare for direct fire. The 155 mm howitzers were not designed for this role, but they are capable. The guns are depressed to minimum elevation. High explosive shells are fused for impact detonation. At 1,502 hours, German infantry break from the trees in a rush toward the artillery positions. Gun 2 fires directly into them at a range of 180 meters. The shell detonates on impact, the blast tearing through the assault. Bodies are flung backward. The attack collapses. The tirailleurs counterattack, clearing the tree line in a brutal close-quarters fight. By 15:30 hours, the threat is eliminated. 14 German bodies are counted. The French lose 4 men. But the incident reveals a grim reality: the front line is dissolving. There is no continuous defensive position, no coherent line of resistance. The artillery battery is now operating in what amounts to no man's land, exposed to infiltration, encirclement, and direct assault. Lebrun posts sentries around the gun positions. He distributes rifles and grenades from a nearby supply dump. The artillerymen, trained to serve guns, must now prepare to fight as infantry. As evening approaches on May 18, Marchand reports from his observation post, multiple fires visible to the south and west. Sounds of heavy fighting. Unable to maintain continuous observation due to smoke. The battlefield is disintegrating into chaos. Villages burn. Roads are choked with refugees and retreating soldiers. German forces are no longer advancing in coordinated spearheads, they are flowing through gaps like water through a broken dam. At 19:20 hours, the battery fires its 1,400th shell since the operation began. 1,480 remain. Night falls for the third time. The gun crews sit beside their weapons, too tired to speak. They eat cold rations and drink water from canteens. Some write letters they will never send. Others simply stare into the darkness. Lebrun makes his rounds, checking each gun position, speaking briefly with the crews. He does not offer false hope or empty encouragement. He simply acknowledges their presence, their work, their endurance. At Gun 1, the crew commander, Sergeant Émile Rousseau, a farmer from Normandy, asks the question everyone is thinking: "Sir, when the ammunition runs out, what then?" Lebrun considers his answer carefully. "Then we spike the guns, destroy the sights and firing mechanisms, and withdraw on foot to friendly lines. If there are friendly lines to reach." Rousseau nods slowly. And if we are surrounded before that happens? Then we fight as infantry until we cannot fight anymore. The sergeant accepts this without comment. There is nothing more to say. The third day begins at 0600 hours on May 19th. The morning is cold and clear. German aircraft appear overhead within minutes, reconnaissance planes and fighters, circling lazily, unchallenged. French anti-aircraft guns have either withdrawn or run out of ammunition. At 0715 hours, Marchand calls in a fire mission. German troops are digging in on the southern edge of Stonne, establishing defensive positions. They are no longer attacking, they are consolidating their gains, preparing to hold what they have taken. The battery fires 18 shells into the positions, disrupting the work but causing minimal casualties. The Germans simply wait for the barrage to end, then resume digging. It is a disturbing development. The Wehrmacht is now confident enough to ignore French artillery, to simply absorb the fire and continue operations. It suggests they know what Lebrun knows: the guns will soon fall silent. At 1020 hours, a Luftwaffe bomber formation appears, Heinkel He-111s, flying in tight formation at medium altitude. They are not targeting the artillery battery. They are heading northwest, toward French supply lines and reserves. One aircraft lags behind the formation, trailing smoke from its port engine. It loses altitude, turning eastward in an attempt to reach German-held territory. As it passes over the ridge, Gun 3's crew watches its descent. The aircraft crashes 3 kilometers away, in a field beyond the French lines. A column of black smoke marks the impact point. No parachutes are seen. It is a small moment, a footnote to the larger battle, but the gun crew watches in silence. Even enemies fall from the sky and die in foreign fields. By midday on May 19th, the ammunition count has dropped to 1,280 shells. Approximately 24 hours of fire remaining, if expenditure continues at current rates. But fire missions are becoming less frequent. The battle for Stonne is winding down. French armor has withdrawn. Infantry positions are being abandoned. The Germans are no longer attacking with the same intensity, they are simply occupying ground that the French can no longer hold. At 1445 hours, Lebrun receives a radio message from Division Artillery. The withdrawal order has been issued. All units are to begin displacing to secondary positions 15 kilometers to the northwest. Artillery units will provide covering fire, then destroy their guns and withdraw on foot if necessary. The timeline is explicit: displacement begins at 2200 hours. All guns must be rendered inoperative by midnight. Lebrun gathers his officers. The final fire plan is prepared. The battery will fire every remaining shell at pre-designated targets, road junctions, known German assembly areas, approach routes, in a continuous barrage designed to cover the withdrawal of French infantry. Then, when the last shell is gone, they will destroy the guns and march into the night. At 1800 hours, the final bombardment begins. The final bombardment is methodical, almost ceremonial in its precision. Lebrun has divided the remaining 1,280 shells among 3 guns, assigning each a specific sector of responsibility. Gun 1 targets the main road south of Stonne. Gun 2 focuses on the eastern approach routes. Gun 3 hammers suspected German assembly areas in the valley. There is no longer any attempt to conserve ammunition. The mathematics of survival have been replaced by the mathematics of maximum effect. Every shell will be fired. Nothing will be left for the enemy. At 1815 hours, Marchand calls from his observation post. His voice is steady, professional, emptied of emotion. All targets acquired. Adjustments complete. Fire at will. The guns begin their final work. Boom. Reload. Boom. Reload. Boom. The rhythm is hypnotic, relentless. The crews move with mechanical efficiency, each man knowing his role so completely that thought becomes unnecessary. Muscles remember what minds no longer need to command. Shells arc through the evening sky and fall among German positions. Explosions ripple across the valley floor. Roads are cratered. Buildings collapse. Fires spread through abandoned vehicles and equipment. The Germans respond with their own artillery, but the counter-battery fire is sporadic, poorly coordinated. The Wehrmacht is focused on consolidation, not destruction. They know the French are withdrawing. They know the battle is won. They are content to let the remnants escape rather than waste ammunition pursuing them. This indifference is perhaps the cruelest acknowledgement of defeat. At 1945 hours, Gun 2 suffers a mechanical failure. The recoil mechanism seizes after the 1,847th round fired since May 16. The gun can no longer absorb the shock of firing. One more shot might tear the weapon apart. The crew commander reports to Lebrun. The decision is immediate: redistribute the remaining ammunition to guns 1 and 3. Gun 2's crew will prepare the weapon for demolition. Sergeant Rousseau and his men use sledgehammers to destroy the gun's sights, firing mechanisms, and elevation gears. They pour sand into the breech and barrel. They remove the firing pins and throw them into the darkness. When they are finished, the gun is nothing more than a steel sculpture, useless to anyone. At 20:30 hours, the ammunition count reaches critical levels. Gun 1 has 47 shells remaining. Gun 3 has 52. Lebrun makes a final calculation. At current rate of fire, both guns will be empty by 21:45 hours. 15 minutes before the scheduled withdrawal time. He orders both crews to increase their rate of fire. There will be no shells left unfired. No ammunition abandoned. Nothing given to the enemy. The guns roar in the darkness, muzzle flashes illuminating the ridge in stuttering orange light. The crews are beyond exhaustion now, operating in a fugue state where pain and fatigue have been replaced by a kind of grim transcendence. Marchand continues to call adjustments from his observation post, even though he can barely see the impact zones in the darkness. His voice over the telephone line is hoarse, cracking with fatigue. Down 50. Right 20. Fire for effect. At 2,118 hours, Gun 3 fires its final shell. The crew stands motionless as the round arcs away into the night. They do not cheer. They do not celebrate. They simply watch the distant explosion, a brief bloom of fire in the valley below. Then they begin the demolition. Hammers rise and fall. Metal screams as components are smashed beyond repair. The gun that has fired without pause for 72 hours is rendered silent forever. Gun 1 continues alone. 43 shells. 42. 41. Lebrun stands beside the weapon, watching the crew work. These men, farmers, clerks, factory workers, have become something else over the past 3 days. They have been forged by fire and exhaustion into instruments of singular purpose. At 2,137 hours, the ammunition count reaches single digits. 9 shells remain. Lebrun picks up the field telephone and speaks to Marchand. Final rounds. What is your last target? Marchand's reply comes after a long pause. The road junction south of Stonne. Grid 547,289. Where this all started. Lebrun nods, though Marchand cannot see him. Confirmed. 9 rounds. Fire for effect. Gun 1 fires its final barrage. Each shell is loaded with deliberate care, as if it were the first rather than the last. The gun roars. The shell flies. The explosion blooms in the distance. 8 shells. 7. 6. The crew says nothing. They simply work, loading and firing, mechanical and precise. 3 shells. 2. 1. At 2,144 hours on May 19, 1940, the final 155 mm shell leaves the barrel of Gun 1. It arcs through the darkness and detonates on the road junction south of Stonne, the same location the battery targeted with its first round 72 hours earlier. The gun falls silent. For a moment, no one moves. The sudden absence of noise is profound, almost physical. For 3 days, this ridge has been defined by the thunder of artillery. Now there is only the distant crackle of small arms fire and the low rumble of burning villages. Sergeant Rousseau breaks the spell. Destruction detail, commence. The crew attacks the gun with hammers and pry bars. They shatter the sights, wreck the traversing mechanism, destroy the breech block. They pour sand and gravel into every opening. They remove critical components and hurl them into the darkness in different directions. When they finish, Gun 1 is scrap metal. At 2,158 hours, Lebrun assembles the battery. 31 men remain of the original 48. The rest are dead, wounded, or missing. They stand in the darkness, filthy and hollow-eyed, clutching rifles and personal equipment. Lebrun's orders are brief. We march northwest. Stay together. No lights. No noise. If we encounter German forces, we do not engage unless fired upon. Our mission is to reach friendly lines. Move out. They depart the ridge at 2,205 hours, leaving behind the wreckage of 4 artillery pieces and 2,880 shell casings scattered across the position. The ridge falls silent behind them. The march is conducted in complete darkness. The men move in single file, each keeping physical contact with the man ahead. There are no roads, no guides, only a compass bearing and the hope that French lines still exist somewhere to the northwest. At 2,340 hours, they hear vehicles approaching from the south. The column freezes. Lebrun signals for everyone to take cover in the tree line. A German supply convoy passes on the road below, trucks, half-tracks, and motorcycles, moving with headlights blazing. The vehicles are so close that the French can hear German voices, laughter, the clatter of equipment. The convoy passes without incident. The German soldiers have no idea that 31 French artillerymen are lying in the darkness 15 meters away. The march continues through the night. Men stumble over unseen obstacles. Some fall and must be helped to their feet. No one speaks. The only sounds are breathing, footfalls, the rustle of equipment. At 0315 hours on May 20th, they encounter a French checkpoint, a handful of infantry manning a roadblock. The soldiers are nearly as shocked to see the artillery unit as Lebrun is to find them. Where is the front line? Lebrun asks. The infantry sergeant gestures vaguely to the north. There is no front line, sir. Just units falling back. Division headquarters is in red hell, or was 6 hours ago. Everything is falling apart. Lebrun thanks him and moves on. The battery has no orders, no assigned positions, no mission. They have become refugees in their own army. They march through May 20th and into May 21st, joining the chaotic withdrawal of French forces. Roads are clogged with soldiers, civilians, and abandoned equipment. German aircraft strafe columns at will. There is no organization, no coordination, only the desperate instinct to move away from the advancing enemy. On May 22nd, the battery reaches a collection point near Reims. A harassed staff officer takes their names and assigns them to a scratch unit being formed from stragglers and remnants. There is no mention of the 155th Regiment of Artillery. It no longer exists as a coherent formation. Of the 31 men who left the ridge, 29 are still present. 2 were lost during the march, separated in darkness, their fates unknown. On June 17, 1940, Marshal Pétain announces that France will seek an armistice with Germany. The war in France is over. Capitaine Maurice Lebrun surrenders to German forces on June 21 near Lyon. He will spend the next 5 years in a prisoner of war camp in Germany. He will never speak publicly about the 72 hours at Stonne. Sous-Lieutenant Antoine Marchand escapes to Britain and joins the Free French forces. He will fight in North Africa and participate in the liberation of France in 1944. In his personal diary, he will write only one entry about Stonne: "We fired until there was nothing left to fire. It changed nothing." Sergeant Émile Rousseau returns to his farm in Normandy after the war. He keeps a single shell casing from Gun 1 on his mantle until his death in 1968. He never explains its significance to his children. The village of Stonne changed hands 17 times during the Battle of France, more than any other location in the campaign. It was finally occupied by German forces on May 25, 1940. The village was destroyed almost completely. After the war, French historians attempting to document the Battle of Stonne discovered references to a French artillery battery that conducted sustained fire operations from May 16 to May 19. Unit records were incomplete. Casualty lists were fragmentary. The exact number of shells fired could not be confirmed. The battery's contribution to the battle was noted in a single line in the official history of the 3rd Armored Division. Artillery support was provided by elements of the 155th Regiment, which maintained fire until ammunition was exhausted. No medals were awarded. No commendations were issued. The men who fired for 72 hours until the ammunition ran out became a footnote, one small entry in the vast catastrophe of the fall of France. But they did what they were ordered to do. They held the line. They bought time. They fired every shell. And when there was nothing left to fire, they destroyed their guns and walked into the darkness. This is not a story of victory. This is a story of duty measured in shells and hours. Of men who understood that their sacrifice would not change the outcome, but did it anyway because the order was given and the position had to be held. In war, most acts of courage go unrecorded. Most sacrifices are footnotes. Most men who do extraordinary things under impossible circumstances are forgotten. The 6th Battery, 155th Regiment of Artillery fired 2,880 shells over 72 hours in May 1940. Then they ceased to exist.